Hello, everyone. A warm welcome to all our attendees and speakers at Wolters Kluwer's webinar on automating audit to improve quality. Today, we have with us Mr. Mahender Komaravolu, who is a partner at M. Bhaskara Rao and Company and is also our client. He's a fellow chartered accountant and has been associated with the firm for over 15 years and as a partner since 2012. He has a passion for information systems audit and learning emerging technologies. He is a part of special interest group of ISACA Hyderabad chapter for the research on blockchain. Our next speaker is Mr. Sunil Ananthanarayanan, partner at SKR and Company LLP, also our client. He is a fellow member of ICAI with over 12 years of experience spanning across a sector of industries. He has handled various engagements with specific expertise in statutory audits, third-party assurance, SOC audits, SOC 1 and SOC 2, internal audits, and IT audits. We also have with us Mr. Chris Agarwala, VP Tax and Accounting at Wolters Kluwer. During the webinar, if you have any questions, do please share them on the Q&A panel. We'll address them right towards the end. We'd like to let you know that we are recording this event and its link will be shared with everyone soon after. It's now over to you, Chris.
Thank you so much, Neha. Neha, can I also be presenting my document?
Yeah, sure, Chris.
Yeah. So good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our focused webinar on the smartest CA. First of all, I hope you and your loved ones and everybody in your firm is doing well. I know we've been through troubled times. Thankfully, things are turning for the better. And I have the pleasure of two of our esteemed clients who are joining us, Mr. Mahender and Mr. Sunil, who have been using a solution on audit automation. And the theme for today's session is essentially to share with you how do we move towards making audit faster, better, and the ability for us to be able to do it with better quality. I hope my screen is visible.
Yes, Chris.
Great. So just a brief background, if some of you may not be aware, Wolters Kluwer CCH is the world's largest provider of tax and accounting information and software globally. We've been in this market for well over 100 years, and in Asia since 1987. In India, in fact, we've been there for well over a decade, and we are very focused on serving customers in this space. Tax and accounting professionals is the core of who we serve. We are now about a $5 billion company. Market cap is over 20 billion. We are traded in Europe and the US, just to give you a brief perspective. And we are probably the only global real player here in the tax and accounting space who's been focused on the Indian market. So I'll take a step back. So what does success mean for your firm, right? When we're talking about audit automation. In the current scenario, it's obviously increasing fees on your existing services, attracting more clients, creating a better customer experience, offering more services and new revenue streams, and obviously increasing efficiency to deliver more at the lower cost. And how many of us are really using any audit automation tool today? A lot of us are using Excel. We are using our own internal developed workflows. When we ask around, a few firms have been using some global tools. Some people use Google Docs, so on and so forth. But is there something which is really comprehensive, which is integrated, which can really help them do more? And the reasons for this are very, very important. Most of the forward-thinking organizations are leveraging digital solutions such as cloud, mobile, automation, and analytics to create superior value. This year alone, as you guys may have been following the news, there are over 21 unicorns which have got minted in India. And the core for all of these companies, very young companies, is technology. It's technology which is driving and creating value for everyone. If a recent survey showed that the setting of a CA's practice strategic direction has never been so closely linked to successful use of technology. And that's where early adopters are the ones who've made maximum benefit. And we are seeing that with audit automation. We launched this solution a couple of years ago, and this year we have really seen traction picking up for the solution. Some of our customers who purchased it last year have also really started using and extracting the maximum benefit in this audit season. And this is the perfect time for you to think about, okay, how do I incorporate this solution into my workflow this year so that next year, when the audit season starts, you're fully prepared. You've already done some audits on the system. You're ready. And I think that's really what's separating, in a way, the early adopters who are creating the maximum value and being able to generate that in today's time and era where fees are under pressure, clients are under pressure, and whether we like it or not, remote work is here to stay. So why audit automation software? Why not continue the way we're doing? Why not just use Microsoft Teams or Google Docs or something else? It's because the standards and compliance for audit is increasing, right? I think we've all seen the kind of cases even some of the big four and others have faced, the kind of fines which are coming down, the challenges that everybody's facing. It's very, very important that the quality of audit, and ICAI is pushing this as well. The International Indian Standards of Accounting are laying down the path where we have to be more and more careful of the way we do our audit. So the compliance factor has gone up manyfold. And that brings us to the next point, which is the fact that you need to have robust documentation and a digital trail for all your documents. And that's something which you can't have in multiple places. For example, even if there's a peer review, half the time we are scrambling and we are wasting hours, productive billable hours, in trying to look for documents in various places. Sometimes it becomes person dependent and not process dependent. So that's where, because there is so much paper, so much information which is generated, this documentation is something which is really, really helpful. And of course, the next year when the same client comes back, you're able to use whatever you already have if it's in a digital format, rather than be able to create everything else from scratch. And lastly, even the requirements from clients and auditors are changing, right? It's clients are now becoming more and more online, they're becoming more agile, and they expect things faster, faster turnarounds. They want documents faster, they want reports faster, they want everything standardized. And that's again something where automation software will help you. So is really your firm prepared? And I think that's a question which some of our clients who are on the call will also be able to answer. I think it's very important to see how we are actually keeping this information. And I alluded to this a short while ago. We have all the information, but it's all disconnected, whether it's your planning documents, your checklists, your templates, your work papers, yeah, the trial balances. How does all of this work together when it comes to an audit? You will be using digital tools for each of these, but is it really truly connected? And that's where the automation software comes in. It provides an automated process from start to finish, right from your appointment letters, your planning stage, all the way to an end finished report, which comes out from the software itself. It reduces paper, it helps manage things smoother, it makes sure documents are not lost, and there is a robust way in which we are able to be able to apologies for the doorbells. We are able to get information in, as well as the fact that you're able to use this information in an easier way. You're able to tag the same document for multiple checklists, so you don't have to keep uploading things or filing the same paper in multiple places. We're also able to ensure that peer reviews and other documentation is in place. Anytime there's an investigation, God forbid, or any other cases, all the documents are available, as well as a very good maker checker concept where the juniors are able to ask questions, there are red flags raised, and only once the partner signs off can the audit really move ahead. And that's really important to minimize risk, minimize errors, and create an automatic quality control when it comes to an audit software. So the right technology for you is something that aligns and works with your strategy. It's a compliance solution, it's documentation management, it's a very secure and mature solution that we are offering, something that's been used for decades in the UK, which aligns very closely with our Indian system, and also it's customized to IGAP and IND-AS, so that you have something right off the bat which you can use on your day-to-day work environment. And I think that's very important. And once you've decided that you want to go ahead with technology, I think it's very important that you set your strategy and achieve a buy-in. It really comes down from the senior partners in terms of how this implementation goes forward. Identify what are some of your systems and technology already. Will you need to augment those, improve those, create the plan, and then ensure that everyone is really aligned to following this. And that's where a model in audit automation software is not something that pushes you every year and then keeps pressure on you for renewing. It's a single license, and then you get enough time for you to be able to disseminate this. There's a individual partner license as well as junior licenses, so you're able to get your full team really on board, because it's all collaborative, right? And of course, the solution also has an offline mode, an online mode. You can host it on your private cloud, or you can use it on your work client, or within your own VPN environment. So we have multiple solutions possible to help sort of combine it with the IT strategy and the compliance and data strategy that you have. So when all of this information is connected for you, that's when things work well. And that's where CCH Audit Automation comes in. Thank you all very much. I hope this was helpful. Over to our esteemed panelist, Mr. Mahender. Thank you.
Thank you, Krish. Let me just quickly share my deck. So to start with, I would just like to give a brief on what the whole session is about. Though Krish has set the pace for the entire session on audit automation, but when you talk about automation, there are various aspects for the audit process. It could be pertaining to your documentation, it could be pertaining to your entire client management, and so forth. So what we are going to focus here is more on your audit process, as well as how you maintain your audit file, how you do right from your planning to your execution, and then how do you close your file in an automated environment. Uh, I'm here to share my experience of how this automation has helped us in achieving the quality or improving the quality from where we were to where we are, and what are the various challenges that we had faced either in the implementation, in the rollout, and in the current phase of these COVID times, where we all had to work on a different, for example, the work from home, where either your clients are prepared or not prepared. So let me straight away jump into the presentation. I don't have too many slides on the deck. It's a simple presentation, but my endeavor is to bring some insights on how it benefits us, how it can achieve improving the quality of our audits. So if you look at any of the engagements that we as a firms do, we can actually classify into maybe 5, 6 segments, which includes your preliminary pre-planning activities, your planning activities. Then you'd go about doing execution based on your plan. Then is your review and completion. And based on your execution and review, you decide on what are the reportable facts. And at the end comes the file closure. Now, since to simplify this, I would take the example of the assurance engagements. Now, when we talk about assurance engagements, let us again simplify by using only the statutory audits. But of course, this can be replicated to other engagements like your limited reviews, or be your certification, or any other attest functions that you may do. So if you take up your statutory audit, the challenge is to ensure that you plan your audit, execute it, and then produce a report which is in compliance with the various standards which are set forth by various regulators. Now, being in a statutory audit, the firm or the practicing unit would be subjected to various reviews. Now, the intention of the reviews is that you maintain to or you adhere to those quality standards. Now, I tried an attempt over here to what you call map all the standards to these 5, 6 stages. So don't worry about the font size, because I'm just going to take you at a high level overview of what could be the various challenges that we might face while trying to implement compliance with these standards, and how automating your audit process can help you overcome, if not eliminate, but at least minimize the risk of non-compliance with these various standards which the regulators often keep reviewing either through the peer review process or through the QRB process, or now as the NEFRA, and there are various other regulators now who are actually looking into the audit files to see whether you have adhered to these basic standards. Now, as Krish was saying, if you are automating your process, the one advantage that you have is you will have a repository of checklists, templates, and all sorts of work papers. So what you need to decide is to customize, pick and choose which are relevant for your audit. If you're not automating, there's always a possibility of missing out on the relevant uh, checklists or relevant procedures that need to be performed, and we might have to miss out on some of those things. But while automating, it will always force you to ensure compliance with the base standards that are set up in the automated process. For example, let us see starting with pre-engagement. You've been appointed as an statutory auditor for a firm or for a company. So there are various possibilities over here. So you could come in as the first auditor of the company. You could come in as to fill in the casual vacancy of the company, or you are being appointed as a replacement for a retiring auditor, or you are appointed for the second term of 5 years where you had already served a period of 5 years. Now, if you look at the various requirements under either the ICAI or the Code of Ethics, there are various requirements for each of these different categories. Do not want to miss out on any of these basic requirements while you are accepting an engagement. So automating helps you in keeping track of what are relevant for you at that point in time, and see that you comply with those minimum requirements. So by automating, by selecting, say, for example, I'm doing the audit for a company where there is a retiring auditor and I am stepping into his shoes. So it will tell me that, hey, before you accept these engagements, go and check with your previous auditor and get an NOC from them on the requirement as under the Code of Ethics in the Companies Act. And it will always prompt you to again go back and check whether the requisites have been done or not before you accept it. It will remind you to get the consent, issue the consent letter, issue your acceptance letter. And so if the situation is that it's not the retiring auditor, but you are being appointed as a first auditor, some of these requirements are not relevant. So you need not spend time on, again, looking into those aspects. So the application should be robust enough to give you the checklist or the procedures which are relevant for you based on the given situation. So that is where the automation helps you. If you go further from preliminary activities to the planning activities, some of the challenges that firms like us face is, for example, say, if you have happened to had a chance to look at the various what you call or the QRB reports, wherein they have reviewed across India the various firms' performance in terms of compliance with these standards. So some of the things which come out of those reports and which are guiding factors for us is that often the reviewer has commented that the plan, there's no match between what is planned and what is being executed, or there's always some comments which says that the planning has not been adequate. So am I audible? Somebody saying that there's some break in the voice.
Now, yes, but I think some connectivity issue, but as of now, perfectly fine.
Okay, thank you. So some of these aspects where the reviewer keeps on commenting that there's a gap between what is being planned and what is being executed. Probably one of the basic reason is that the practicing unit is not able to match or map their planning with the procedures that they have designed. So automating helps you to overcome this challenge, because automate for each risk or for each critical item that you have identified in your financial statements, you would map it to certain audit procedures. So by looking at the workflow, you can drill down either from the balance sheet to the last procedure, or from the procedure you can go back and see that how these procedures affect my risk assessment, or whether these procedures have an impact on testing of my key controls or not. Similarly, a couple of other activities like analytical procedures. Now, what we do in analytical procedures in general, if suppose you're not automated, if you're on your earlier system of manual era, you would probably put in your current year balances against your previous year balances, and then compare and see what is the trend and what is the movement, what are the significant items, and so forth. So what is the outcome of going to design any additional procedures, or are you identifying any critical areas where you need to increase your focus during your execution? So if you have done that and you are not able to map it and record it in your documents, it would be again a flag for the reviewers stating that, hey, look, you have identified some of the critical things through your analytical procedures, but what is the procedure that you have done to mitigate the analytical procedures? So the solution that we used over here, the audit automation, has actually the facility wherein once we date our trial balance into the application, it itself throws out the various what you call graphs, various trend analysis, analytical review of say 2 years, 3 years, whatever period that you want. You can compare it with the budgets, and then for each of the significant item that you would provide through the analytics, you can tag it or map it to a process or a procedure and say that because of the significance identified here, these are the additional things that we are doing. And based on the outcome of this that we do, this is what should go into my reporting, or whether the control or the risk with that I am satisfied or unsatisfied. Some of the other things are the materiality. So with the automated solution, we just have to put the trial balance once and you get your materiality with you. Now, the materiality is used across an automated application. Because if you're on a manual process, there's often seen that the firms do compute the materiality for the sake of computing and keep it on file, but how that materiality is used throughout your audit process is not demonstrated. So the challenge over there is to see that whether your sample sizes are dependent on your materiality, whether the observations or the issues that you come across, whether that is correlated with materiality. Demonstrating of these require additional effort. Though in theory, it's quite simple saying that this is my materiality and this is the observation and this is below the materiality. In theory, it is simple. But if you want a reviewer to understand at a higher level, the challenge with the reviewers is that we want the reviewers to see the audit file independently without the audit team in place and come to the same conclusion as what the audit team has arrived at, but without the help of the audit, a perfect audit file, which most of the times it's very difficult if you are doing it in your manual system or using only the Word, Excel, without trying to link up all your procedures, all your materiality or your issues. The other aspect, so from the planning and to the execution, the other aspect that comes over there is the risk assessment. One of the significant always comes in the reports of these QRBs and the ICI peer review reports which they have done pan India. So state that there has been a risk assessment done, risks have been identified, but during the course of audit, no correlation some of the procedures that and how procedures addresses your risk. Now, not only risk, there's also the requirement of testing of the internal controls over financial reporting. So that is one of the big challenge where your things are not robust enough separate or RCMs in place, but proprietary in nature. So how to demonstrate that they have a built-in control system and you have tested that control system before you give your opinion on those uh, uh, from those what has been prescribed over there. So if you're automated, if you are using an solution, it has a beautiful what you call a system of mapping your client's business processes with the risks that you have identified or with the risks that the client themselves have identified, and then what are the significant controls which mitigate these risks. So you can do a three-way mapping of all the three processes, risks, and control, and then you can decide what do you want to test, whether you want to test, or whether you want to do a walkthrough of the business process, or whether you want to do a testing of the design of the control or the operating effectiveness of that control, or whether you want to design a procedure to possibility. So whatever way you want, you can design your procedures and then conclude on all the items at the same fashion based on the outcome of this. So automation has helped us in actually overcoming the difficulty of managing the audit risk by identifying what are the risks, what are the controls, how do we map those controls, whether or not the client has those infrastructure to map those client risks and controls. We, at least to the extent it impacts our financial statements, we are at least able to now map and test these controls as well as risk assessment. So that is one of the significant, I believe that that's one of the significant plus point for automating or moving over from a manual Word and Excel based audits to an automated software. The other aspects are on the analytics planning. Now, even during the course of your audit, there could be a situation where you may come across new findings which may require you to alter your planning. So you have thought that I will do only some 10-15 procedures in, say, in relation to inventory. But during the course of audit, there's an additional evidence which necessitated you to tailor your program or use the audit to give a trail of what was planned, what was agreed, and what subsequent changes made to that plan, so that you have a complete trail of seeing even 5 years down the line or 10 years down the line to tell that, hey, this is what I was planned, but because of these 4-5 circumstances or instances, I had there's always a possibility that you might miss out to note the reasons why you had to tailor those things if you're not using a solution which actually tracks the need for altering your planning procedure. Some of the other aspects include over here on how to monitor the related party transactions, how related transactions affect your various balance sheet items, or where are these grouped. So there are various built-in tools and procedures in the application which helps you to actually record and then reference it across your entire audit file. So one of the key advantages of using an automation tool is you have something called as your permanent file and your current file. Though you can do the same thing in your physical also, but when you want to link something, you want to again reference it back, retrieving is a challenge for everyone. Whereas in an automated solution, you just need to create a document once and you can reference it across your audit file, whether it be in your permanent file or whether in current file, and across your audit file when it's in an automated phase. Some of the benefits of this is on the monitoring the quality. Now there is something called as a maker checker even in the application. So each and every checklist is to be filled by somebody, is to be reviewed by somebody. Now that's a built-in process, and you cannot overrun that process. You can determine on what levels you want what you call the review procedures to happen. For example, there can be an article assistant, there can be a junior, there can be a senior, they can be a manager, they can be a partner, they can be a second partner. So you can define the level of hierarchy, but you cannot totally remove the hierarchy. You at least need one maker and at least one reviewer for a file to be built in and to be closed appropriately. So that helps in building some level of what you call fixing up the responsibility, and then ensuring that the work of the person is always reviewed by some senior before it is actually closed out to your reporting phase. Now, even in the reporting, if you are doing on a manual thing, you will always have to keep track of what are the various issues that you keep coming across in your entire audit process. So there is a high possibility that you might miss out in the thick of things, that some of the issues have come, but we could not discuss it with the management, we could not report it. Whereas over here, the facility is available, there is a tool available within the application which will allow you to collate the observations at each stage of your audit. And at the end of the day, you can generate a single report which will collate the issues that you have gathered, what are the responses you have get from the management in respect of these, and then how you are going to dispose them, whether you are satisfied with them, whether you are going to whether it's a reportable issue, whether it goes for a qualification or a modification. So that choice is up to you, but you have a repository of the issues that have been generated throughout your audit process. So the advantage of automating, if you see, is on the ability to subsequent years. Now, it often happens that you have spent time and effort in designing your work papers, in designing the audit procedures for a particular client, but in the next year, you want these references to be brought forward. You want the responses that you have entered in the previous year or in the previous years to be seen in the subsequent year. So the automation has the facility where you can balance your audit file for the current year and carry it forward to the subsequent years, along with the responses that were there in the previous years. So you can always have a quick reference to see whether this was relevant in the previous year, and if it is relevant for the current year or not, or what has changed in the current period. You can always draw an inference from that. So moving forward, if we look at what could be the key takeaways of automating the practice or the processes are, these are the high level advantages, I would say. Accessibility, availability. Now, if you see the last 2 years, these have been the most challenging times where either your team is working remotely or the client is working remotely, but you still need to build up that audit file and you still need to retain that quality. So how do you do that when you cannot access those physical files? You always have the option of, going to Microsoft Teams and using the SharePoint or doing it on the Google Drive and all, but that doesn't fix up the accountability. That doesn't give the anybody can go and what you call alter it. There's no closure of the audit work paper. But when you're automating it, you can ensure that whether your team is working remotely from home, everybody has access to the same database, everybody is working on the same work paper, and yet you can fix up the accountability of who has done the basic work, who has reviewed it, who has approved it, at what stage the audit files are. And you don't have to worry about the integrity of these audit work papers, because these are well secured in the applications database. And automating also helps you in standardization. Now with the firms may have different is a single location large firm with each partner having his own methodology of working. So using an automated tool helps you in achieving these standardizations in a much better way than using your what you call the normal based tools. Now, the next two things are on the rigid and flexibility. Why I'm saying that the application should be rigid? It should be rigid in the sense that it should force you to do compliances with the various regulations or the standards that are there in the requirement of the ethics or the auditing standards. But at the same time, it should give you the flexibility to decide what are applicable to the particular client and to tailor it based on the size and nature of the entity, or probably based on the engagement that we are doing for that particular client. So if you look at what should be your considerations when you want to implement an audit automation, the first thing is, of course, you need to have a good implementation partner. The implementation partner is not just one who would simply sell you out a accounting application or an audit application and you go about tweaking it. He should be there throughout your implementation as well as post implementation to support you in a timely fashion, because your audits are mostly time bound. You have the requirement of compliances with SEBI listing or the timely publication or the tax filing requirement. So your implementation partner should support you in a timely manner so that you can achieve those timelines which you are committed to your clients. The second thing that you should look at is the practice area. Now, once you onboard an application audit automation solution, you cannot simply go about implementing it for the entire firm at one go. You have to identify what are the low hanging fruits, what are the practice areas which you can actually implement it, and then see that the benefits are derived out of it, so that that gives the initiative as well as the encouragement to others also to move on to automation and simplify their practice areas. And of course, you need to identify the champions within your firm who was going to drive this implementation. Now, top-down approach, there's no second thought about that, because unless the partner of the firm or one of the partner of the firm drives it, uh, there's no what you call the commitment from the team to uh, adopt it and then take it forward. And once you have identified your practice areas, your team, and then the implementation partner, the next steps are only to identify who is the specific team and what is the kind of support that they require, either the infrastructure related support or any other support that they require, so that they can see a seamless implementation for their initial engagements. So once you're through with those initial engagements, you will identify your own challenges. So every firm may have their own challenges depending on the size of implementation and the nature of the engagements that they're trying. So we have actually tried to use it for statutory audits, limited reviews, certification process, and we have been quite successful in these areas. And we had done the challenges at each level and the complexities of each of these and the complexity of the clients. We have rolled it over a period of time. And the biggest choice that you need to make is that to see that you run this parallelly. You cannot, for the first few months of your implementation, you cannot decide that, okay, I'll cut it off here and I'll start working on the automation, because you're not aware as of now that what are the challenges that you might face. So it's always advisable that in your initial phases, look for a parallel run, and once you have stabilized your process on the automated platform, then you can cut over your other engagements and then roll it over to the automated process. So this is what I have to say in respect of how we went about and challenges that we have faced and how we have actually tried and implemented. Any questions? Probably I'd be happy to respond to them at the end of the session. So over to you, Neha.
Thank you, Mr. Mahidar. This has been very useful. Like you said, if there are any questions from anybody, we'll definitely address them right towards the end of the webinar. I'll now pass it on to Mr. Sunil.
Sure. Thank you, Neha. All right. So very good evening to everybody. Thank you for having me here today for the wonderful session that's just about. And it was a great session by Mahidar to have shared a common thoughts between what I had to say as well. So I'm just going to be a little brief and quick in terms of what I had to say, considering the time that we have. So first of all, just to start about, we have been inside the CCH Audit Automation domain for quite a few months by now. And what we have been able to go through this entire phase is something which I would like to share across in today's session. So as we had always been with the traditional methodology of audit, where we have gone ahead and done the manual documentation of the audit procedures, we had decided that with the onset of COVID and all that stuff, we wish to take this manual audit procedures onto a more automated system. And we had been in discussion with CCH for quite a while. And we thought that it could be a right time for us to also venture out to see how this could be implemented across in our firm. So as we always wanted to move inside the audit automation scheme of things, as we know that audit automation is probably the future of how things could be managed, considering the pandemic and the other situations that we are in today. We felt that the first steps that we could take forward would be baby steps in implementing this strategy across our firm. However, as Mr. Mahidar had touched upon as well, this is something which would ideally have to be done like any change management in a phased manner. So what we did, so I'm here to share my practical experience as to what we and our partners decided to do in a firm. So we started out with a planning document where we went ahead to write down as to what kind of clients could probably be relevant in this whole scheme of rollout. And then we went ahead to prepare the document, which gives us a clarity as to how and when we can achieve a real go live in terms of the entire audit being completely inside the audit automation tool by itself. So the audit automation tool is a very, very customizable tool, to be very frank, because it gives us plenty of options to be able to modify our audit procedures, our entire audit activities in a way that is more suitable for us. So though the tool is a commonly available tool, it is very pliable and modifiable, gives us so much of flexibility when it comes to deciding what kind of audit procedures, how you want to design it, and the entire scheme of things out there. So once the planning stage was done, we went ahead as to move on with the identification stage. And as Mr. Mahidar had also indicated, identifying clients is one important activity that we would have to do before we venture out to rolling out this tool across. So we had to identify which clients could probably be more suitable for, or which client engagements could be more suitable and managed inside the CCH Audit Automation. It's something which definitely is going to be possible across for any sort of client that you can do it, be it small, medium, or large clients that you're going to be doing audit engagements for. It is definitely possible that you can bring them inside the audit automation. But then, as we said, taking baby steps is what we had decided to do. And so we identified clients and engagements which could probably be managed out from the CCH's audit automation tool. Once we had the clients identified, we mapped the clients and the team members who were going to be the champions to take part in this whole implementation activity. So apart from the partners on the engagements, the respective team managers and the respective team articles were also identified to be part of this core team who could probably be involved in this entire implementation. So we did that, and then we went ahead and procured licenses, and we had them installed in the respective member systems. So the reason I'm also touching upon the fact that we had to install that in the respective member systems is because of the fact it's not a very challenging system to be installed upon. So it was a fairly straightforward process with a very able support of the CCH Walter Kluwer's team. We were able to get all of these sorted out without any kind of problems at all. And we use laptops for our day-to-day functionalities today because of the work from home scenario that we are all working from. And that was one very important thing because we did not have the requirement of having a high-end system at all. So articles or being managers, the partners, whoever used whatever system they were on, were still able to install it and have no problems at all in terms of communicating with the databases. So we had a different methodology of accessing data and setting it up ourselves. And every firm could be able to do that themselves. It's not a very challenging process. As I said, the audit automation tool implementation team was very helpful along with us in that. The the next step was to obviously set up individual user IDs and passwords for each of the users who are going to be using the CCH Audit Automation tool. That gives us a great degree of accountability when it comes to setting across, saying that who has done what activity inside the entire software. So when we know that someone is logged in inside, there is an audit log available. We know what changes were made. We know who has created a document, who has deleted a document. All of that gets tracked, which gives us a complete audit trail as to what's happened inside the entire audit environment. Finally, there is a tool inside the tool. There is a activity which is the most important activity, I would say, which is called creating a master pack for each of the clients, or probably each category of clients. So that is a very, very important activity, which takes a phenomenal amount of dedication and time that we need to spend in, because that becomes the backbone for every engagement that we're going to be doing on those lines. For example, if we were to do a statutory audit of an Ind AS client, and we know as to what the Ind AS financials are going to be looking like, and we know as to what are the requirements of the disclosures for the Ind AS. Now we have all of that that we can set across in a master pack. And that master pack could be replicated for each of the other clients, which in turn helps us save quite a lot of time. And it did save a lot of time for us for our statutory audits as well. So the next step was to get on the job. So we did implement it. We had spent quite a amount of time ensuring that the master packs are up and running. And then we had the team members, the managers, and the articles get on hands-on with the actual software itself. So this kind of helped us to reach to a point where we did face issues in terms of understanding how it is to be done. And as I said, there were supporting notes available. The help documents are pretty good. They kind of helped us to ensure that the entire process was smooth. And the implementation channel partners were extremely friendly. We could always call them up. Could be any time, could be late in the evenings. We could always reach out to them, and they were always there to help us out. So that was a stage which we were able to work together with, and then move on without much of trouble. And the master packs are the ones, as I said, the fundamental documents, or the fundamental base documents which we need to ensure that they are set in place before we move forward with creating a client pack. So once the master pack is complete, year on year, what we could still be able to do is, if there are any additions in terms of recent updates that are coming up in terms of Companies Act, or be it the accounting standards, disclosures that need to be done, all of this are things that you can always go back to the master pack and amend them. And all clients which are based out of this common master pack will be able to replicate this change. So you make one change, all the team members, all the managers, all the partners, all the clients for whom you're working on with similar master packs will be able to replicate those changes without any significant additional effort at all. So those were important things that we realized as part of this implementation strategy, and this is what we followed inside the firm. So I thought I might just want to share this across with all of you. Let me just go to the next slide. Yeah. So the key takeaways as to why and what was the change that we had after and before and the after of having the CCH audit implementation. So the first one is planning and client documentation acceptance procedures were all maintained in Word files and Excel files, and we used to have sign-offs from respective partners for the client engagement acceptances. So all this CAFs and all of these documents, which were earlier in Word documents, used to be stored in a Excel document or a Word document and put inside folders inside our respective OneDrive or Google Drive or whatever. But today, with the help of CCH's Audit Automation, what happens is every client, when we log in inside, has to mandatorily go through a sequence of procedures, which includes client acceptance, or if it's a first-time client, you do client acceptance procedures, or if it's continuation client, then you think of doing your client continuation procedures. So all of this gets standardized across the firm, irrespective of the kind of engagement that you do, any form of audit engagement that you wish to ensure that you document it. This part of the planning mandatorily is to come out and get documented. So that was a significant amount of, is a significant part of every audit procedure to start with, that we have the client engagement acceptance and the client continuation documented. The second point that I also want to touch upon is about the fact that every team member inside the firm, normally, when the articles complete 3 years, they might stick around with us, or probably that someone newer could come in. There could be rotation, someone who could be off on leave. So there is this problem that, we always rely upon the fact that you copy across the previous year's work papers and you tell them to go through it and then prepare their own work papers. Now, this leads to a lot of, irregularities in terms of saying that they are unstandardized, the look and feel of the work papers, be it the audit procedures that are to be carried out, the way that the presentation of the audit work papers, all of this normally take a hit because of the fact that the degradation in the quality of one work paper to another, the flow through of that could always be a problem for every audit firm. So that is something that this audit automation tool really helps us out there, because what happens is standard work paper templates can be created across for each kind of component. So if I were to take inventory as a component, or if I were to take accounts receivable, accounts payable, all of these can have a separate audit schedule that can be prepared. A lead schedule could be prepared for each kind of work paper with the supporting documentation. So that is a significant amount of time saving that you can achieve while doing an audit. And especially when you want to do a review as a partner for when you sit down for a review with the managers and the team members and the articles, you normally wish to see that there is uniformity in the documentation. That helps you to also have a clear-cut idea as to whether all audit procedures have been carried out, whether all minimum audit documentation has been achieved. This kind of a documentation definitely helps in doing that. The next one is there are various checklists that we follow inside. There are checklists for ensuring, basic things like CARO checklist could be there, or there could be a Companies Act 2013 checklist, or there could be an accounting standard disclosure checklist that you could do, or an Ind AS checklist that could be there. Now, these are checklists which normally are expected to be done out for every client that we do, based on the requirement of the size of the client, or the risk involved in each client. So based on that, what happens is managers and the other things, the articles, when they work on a particular checklist, how much of it is complete? How much of the checklist is actually being done and documented? Which version of the document is final? Now, these are problems that we have been facing earlier as well. And though there are various checks and mechanisms that we have been able to bring across on board to ensure that the checklist could be probably streamlined. But the audit automation tool helped us to a great extent out there as well, because what happens is every client with the master pack, as I said, which is a fundamental document, when you set the master pack with the checklist inside the master pack, when you deploy the master pack to a particular client, what happens is the checklist gets automatically triggered. So this checklist becomes one of the important processes for the audit closure as well, where you just can't ignore a checklist and move on to a closure. So this would ensure that every checklist is complete and is getting reviewed before it is actually taken to a formal closure as part of the audit completion. So audit programs, earlier when we used to have a manual system created, and as I said, whether a particular audit program needs to be updated, or whether a particular audit program which was taken and done the last year, was it the final one, or was there a review that was done, and was there an update that was to be done? All of these are challenges which technically we as a firm had faced over a long period of time. But with the tailoring questions that are there in audit automations, the indecisiveness of a particular article or a manager in terms of understanding whether this audit procedures is required or not is probably taken out of question. Because what happens is when you answer tailoring questions and kind of decide as to what are the components that are there in the chart of accounts, the audit programs are automatically triggered. Now, as I said, this audit program trigger is also based on the fact that your master pack is the one that drives the whole thing. So it's like probably the most important driver for the entire tool. And that becomes the most important thing where we spent a lot of time in ensuring that we streamline that. The next one is review comments. Typically, as most of you know, when you normally have an audit review going on, it could typically be that someone would sit next by you, or someone would be there over a Teams call, and they would be listening to what you say or your comments, but you're not very sure as to if those comments are actually being documented. So, when you take junior articles of somebody at the first or second years, you don't have their habits going on in the first right at the first time, when you tell them some comment, or when you give them a comment, to write it down and clarify or clear it out for you. Now, this tool in CCH is really useful out there, because what happens is when you make a particular comment against a particular work paper in CCH, it goes as a open up pop-up for the person who's actually done the engagement. You can mark it to an article, be it a manager, and the vice versa also works. So if there is a query by an article and they want that to be clarified, all that they need to do is raise a note for the attention of a manager or to the attention of a partner, and that brings more connectivity in the entire audit, because if someone is stuck somewhere, this probably helps them to move forward by ensuring that they've just put in a comment and wait for somebody to clear it for them. So that was a very good amount of, it helped us really in a couple of times where when these sort of comments could be passed on from one person to another. And so that is a real good value addition that we face, because in Excel, when we normally give comments, it kind of just gets clogged inside a small box, becomes difficult to read, or sometimes you just skip it over. You might not even realize that there was a comment out there unless you go through each comment one by one. All of that gets taken care with the help of CCH's tool. The next one is with respect to audit sign-off of each work paper. So as I said, every work paper has to be mandatorily signed off with a maker and a checker. So as Mahidhar had mentioned, so there are definitely minimum of 2 requirements. A maker and a checker becomes 2 important requirements for this particular tool, without which you just can't be running it at all. So with 2 people, or let's assume 3. So there is an article, there is a manager, and there is a partner on the job. Now, if there were 3 people on the job, and if every documentation were to be signed off individually using the login IDs of the article for those that they have done, the work that's been done by the manager or reviewed by the manager gets signed off by the manager. And finally, before the completion of the audit, all the work papers need to be signed off by the partner in charge as well. So now this gives clarity as to review has been completed, and it has been done through the sequence of the juniors, the managers, and the partners, and the entire audit trail is visible for all of the people who are going to be reviewing it. Now, these kind of documentations are going to be extremely useful when people are going to be going through a peer review, and they would see that the trail is being maintained across the entire scene of sequence, the sequence of events. The next important thing which a lot of audit firms are trying the best to document and keep track of is to know how much of time is actually being spent in this audit, and is there recoverability to the audit at all. So in that sense, what happens is in audit automation, there is an option where you can set the recoverability rate for the articled assistant. You can set a recoverability rate for a junior manager, a deputy manager, a senior manager, a partner, or a senior partner for that matter. All of this could be set inside with the recoverability rates in CCH itself, with the expected number of hours that are to be accounted for in this engagement. So what happens is, though the client deliverable is of key significance out here, but it also is good for us to understand if we have spent a lot of time, or if any particular team member has spent more time than what is required for a particular engagement. That helps us to also ensure that we do a review mechanism, we do a performance assessment with an employee or a trained assistant, an articled assistant, and give them valuable inputs for them to understand where they have probably spent more time and how they could improve. Now, that is again a very, very important thing which helps an articled assistant to be groomed in the right manner. And the articled assistants are probably the future of the fraternity as well. So I think that is where this tool also helps us to understand where and how things could be improved as well. Another important part of it is the fact that there are no user access controls that you can probably bring in Excel, but for a username and but for a password to restrict somebody from opening it, or probably if you have a need for opening it, you can give a password for restricting any changes to be made to it. But then with audit automation, you can segregate just as you would do in an ERP as to how much of information is for somebody for actual use and how much of them. So it's a need to use and need to know kind of a requirement that you typically can establish with CCH's audit automation tool, where you're able to segregate each person's roles and responsibilities. Like an article assistant might not be able to make changes to the master pack, or a manager might not be able to do a change to a master pack, but a partner could do a certain few changes. So those are the kinds of segregations that you can achieve in the roles and responsibilities in terms of actual real life roles and responsibilities in an audit. And you try to bring them online into an audit automation tool to ensure that you replicate what you actually wish to do in real life. So that's a significant advantage of using CCH's audit automation tool that we have been able to have takeaways from. And as Mahidhar had put across a beautiful slide on the various standards in auditing that which we as auditors need to comply with. Now, CCH's audit tool helps us to ensure that there is seamless documentation compliances. So as you have seen that the various kind of advantages that we have seen across and over the period of time, even with the limited time frame that we have been using this tool, it's been a phenomenal amount of benefits that we have been able to seek from this particular tool itself. I have one more slide, which kind of brings across a few more important benefits that I thought might be more relevant because we have been able to see this. So one is that a common misnomer could be that this tool could be probably useful only for large clients. But then we understood and realized that it could be useful even for a small audit engagement, a small, a few crores company which is into any sort of a sector. It doesn't matter. Now, as long as you have a master pack that is suitable for a small sized entity, all that you can just have to do is use that master pack and you are up and running for that client. So it doesn't really matter that this particular tool is suitable only for a large company. It's definitely suitable for small or for medium and large companies as well. So that's something that we did realize. I also mentioned and touched upon the tailoring questions earlier, so I'm not going to be repeating that. The current file and permanent file is something which Mr. Mahidhar had already touched upon. So this is something which is really useful because if we are going to be using the, if the client is going to be continuing with us for the second year, which we all wish to, and if you need to reference something from the past year, and or if there is a staff member who wishes to see the last year's documents or see a permanent file, all that they need to do is just be able to go ahead and access the permanent file, and they'll be able to do that. And the beauty of this tool is that there are unique reference numbers that you can give, combination of text and numbers that you can give for every work paper, and you can reference them across to different work papers. So if you are in the middle of an inventory valuation and you have a work paper and you want to reference that to some other particular work paper as well, all that you have to use is probably just give the reference of that work paper and you'll be able to call it across to any other document. So the chart of accounts, the importing the chart of accounts and mapping of the chart of accounts with the respect to financial statement line item. This is a key process which in turn gives a series of benefits, especially when it comes to mapping of an audit procedure, which is the subsequent point of mine. When you have a trial balance that a client has given you and you import it inside audit automation, the advantage is that each of the line item inside the trial balance will get mapped up to a particular audit component. So this audit component in turn would have audit procedures, and each audit procedure has to be compulsorily mapped with an audit assertion. So if there is a particular audit procedure that is to be carried out, and if you were to tell an article or a junior support resource of yours to do a particular audit procedure, you would always want to understand and make them understand about the fact that why is this audit procedure ever at all being carried out? What assertion of the audit procedure, what assertion of the audit does this particular procedure imply towards? So that is the relevance of this particular requirement that we saw, where the audit procedure can be tagged to or is to be tagged to an audit assertion or a sequences of audit assertions, and those audit procedures are tagged to the financial statement line items. And obviously, the most important thing, which would be a saving grace for large companies and medium companies, is about the materiality per se. So materiality, there are a set of materialities that are given by CCH through the standard packs, but then the beauty of it is it can be customized. So if you have or your firm has a set of materiality thresholds and limits that you have built in based on your experience over a period of time, and you wish to use them across in the software is flexible to that extent where you can input your threshold numbers and calculate these numbers. The moment you have these materiality numbers keyed in, and as I said, since the trial balance is also imported at the stage of planning, you import the trial balance. Now, the materiality computation, the materiality calculated number, your significant, all the threshold numbers that you have, right? Your differences posting thresholds, all these numbers will automatically be synced across to your trial balance to give you clear idea as to which items of the financial statements or the trial balance are material for it to be warranting an audit. Now, there are areas where the financial statements might not, or the line item might not warrant an audit, but it could be a key component because it could be something to do with regulatory items. Now, those kind of things as well, practically you can go ahead and carry out audit procedures despite it not giving you a materiality signal. So it's, as I said, very, very flexible to that tune, where it gives you red flags in places where you are supposed to be carrying out something, but you've not done it. But then it's completely left to your choice to ensure that for those areas which are not material, you may still want to go ahead and do out certain procedures. Process, risk, and controls, all of this get mapped again, as I said, to the financial statement line item. So it gives you a risk control matrix. So the kind of an RCM that you have, that sort of a visible risk and control with each process can be mapped. And if there is based on the materiality, the sample sizes, and all of that gets triggered and gives you clarity, and your documents can be attached to each. So if you were to test controls for, let's assume the P2P process, now, when you complete the entire documentation against each risk or against each control, your work papers and the test of controls can be attached to them. So when a person is reviewing the work paper against each risk and control, what was the risk, how was it mitigated with the control, and what is the control testing results indicate, whether it was a pass, fail, or whether there were any exceptions, all of this can be tracked. So that was, again, something which we really found beneficial. Audit journals. Now, this is something which every person who prepares financials in Excel will understand the trouble with. Right? When we start out the audit, we would have a planning trial balance with which we would have planned out our audit procedures. And by the end of the audit, there would probably be plenty of audit journals and audit adjustment entries that we would have passed. Now, these audit journals vary from every Excel version of financials. So we'll have V1, V2, V3, V10, V20, V20 final, V20 draft. Now, there could be several of those versions that might be there in financials. But the advantage of this kind of an audit journal being tracked inside CCH is that all the audit journals have to be tagged inside so that your final ending trial balance matches with your financial statements. So this gives us clarity to say that the next year, when you roll forward your trial balance into the next year's opening balances, you know that your trial balances are definitely correct because you would have matched it with your signed financials. So that is very, very useful, especially when you move on from one year to another as well. Analytical procedures, I think Mahidhar touched upon it, so I'm just going to be quickly brief. So it helps us to ensure that between the current year and last year, all of the trial balance data could be imported. And with a click of a button, you can see various graphs, charts, areas which require your attention, areas where there are significant diversions. All of this comes up straight across in the form of a report and gives you a dashboard kind of a view where you can immediately catch hold of significant deviations, which could probably hint you to carry on additional procedures to ensure that the risks are mitigated in that front. And live tracking status of the audit. Now, this is something that we are currently in the process of trying to see how it works, but then I thought I might just want to bring it across to everybody, because the fact is that what I see in audit automation when I log in inside is pretty much what the other team members will also be able to see in terms of the audit status. So if somebody has completed testing of various controls in a P2P process and they have marked that it is completed, I can be rest assured to see when I log in inside, they would have marked it, and a tick mark against them with the name of the person who's completed would appear. So that gives me comfort to say that the audit is moving in the right direction. I wouldn't say that it is completely in real time, but then as and when they sync the data and it gets completed, I would still be able to see at the end of the day how much of audit has progressed. Now, if this sort of an audit tracking can be established with the help of all the team members or the champions that we identify in the firm, I think then that could probably help in ensuring that your tracking of the audits becomes seamless, where you don't have to call somebody to ask them what's the status of which component, and all of that you can view it yourself as a partner or a manager. And last but not the least is the proper steps in terms of completion of an audit and archival of the audit files. So the moment we complete a particular audit, we would have reviewed all the documents. We would have ensured that the final numbers are tying in with the trial balance. Our final signed documents can be uploaded. Management representation letters could be uploaded as well. All of this can be brought together in one common point or one common audit environment, and then the files could be saved and locked. So which means that that would ensure that any modification to that particular file after a partner has reviewed it would not be possible. So that sort of a control is available unless and until the partner were to come back and make a have their passwords keyed in to make a change. They are not going to be in a position to be able to make any further changes, be it a manager or another article assistant. So the last one, which I also might want to add in here, is about the fact that there is an option where you could add in a 2-partner category of audit review as well. So there could be a quality review partner who could also independently review the entire audit file without having any interference of any other partner or manager in charge. So that gives a lot of confidence in terms of the fact that the entire audit documentation has been taken care of, and the quality review partner can also sign off as an independent person in this whole scheme of things. So I guess, I wanted to convey quite a few of the benefits that we have been able to get out of this particular CCH's audit automation tool. And we really are happy across to be having chosen this product, because we look forward to see that this might help us to streamline the entire audit in the longer run. The way that things are looking like, right? So it seems to be that most of it is going to be online audit, without having to visit the client's places at all. So if this were to continue, and if people are going to be working from home for the times to come, I would definitely think that CCH's tool is definitely going to be a clear winner when it comes to the audit documentation. And we are really happy to be on board with them. And we look forward to future updates and getting in more products from them. Thank you very much for the time, and thanks everybody for your happy listening.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sunil and Mr. Mahidhar, for your fantastic comments and conclusions, as well as your experience. And we are always very excited when our direct customers are able to give us the right feedback and share with our prospects and other customers as well. So now, if you can move to the Q&A, and I will encourage Prasoon to take some of the questions from the Wolters Kluwer side. And Arvind.
Hi, thank you, Chris, and thank you, Mr. Sunil and Mr. Mahidhar, for the wonderful, experience sharing. I hope it helped to the larger community. So we have few questions where, one of the question is, does the software only caters the statutory audit need, or we can perform other audits too? So the software is quite flexible, and one can define the master packs depending on the requirement for the audit. So right now we provide a couple of master packs along with the solution, but you have a liberty to create your own master pack as per your need and requirement. And as and when time progress, we would be definitely coming up with more and more master packs based on the feedback that we receive and based on the market trends. Another question which we have received is about the documents. Can one see the documents which has been stored in various stages of audit in place? Yes, it has a very robust document management system, which is one part of the solution that solves, you can say, one piece of the puzzle. Of course, automating the audit is a very broader term, and documenting all the paperwork in a structure format is one of the puzzle which we have to solve. So certainly, whenever we add a document, we can add it to a specific area, or for the fact, even if we attach a document to a particular audit area while we are doing a field work in that particular audit area, system automatically creates that audit area in your document folder, where your peer reviewer or your colleagues or your management can see all those documents in a very structured format. So the answer is yes. And it also has a maker-checker concept, which our speakers have very well explained all those points. Now, one question that we got is about the materiality calculation. So the materiality benchmark, which has been defined, is based on revenue, total assets. Is there any way to select any other benchmark? Yes, absolutely, yes. You can. So it has been standardized. When we provide you the packs, we have considered the Indian accounting, standards and all, depending on the need of the audit as well, apart from the standard that demands. So, but the system is flexible. You can change the materiality option or the factor through which you want to determine the performance materiality or area materiality. It can be your total assets. It can be your, graduated value of your total income, and you can define the percentage as well there. So even the percentage, you can define it at the master pack. Whatever you define at the master pack, the same reflects for your team members when they go to the field work or to the client place, or they work from their desk for that particular client. Yeah, so these are the few questions that we have received. Of course, there are many other questions that we have received, but by and large, the other questions, they are almost similar to the questions that I have just addressed. So if there are any other questions, I'd be more than happy, to take it. So if you have any other questions, please. Yeah, I think, Neha, we are good. We got several questions, but again, as I mentioned that, the other questions are similar to the one that I have answered.
Right, Prasoon. Prasoon, there's actually one more question before we close. Is it good for AUPs also?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Is it good for AUPs also?
Yes, of course. As I said, this software is pretty much flexible and customizable. Definitely, it will definitely be of help. And then, further, if we want to drill down, as we have seen in with many of our clients with whom we are working very closely, we have seen that they have also further, broke down the master pack into industry-specific requirement for the larger audits that they are performing in their firm. So yes, absolutely, yes, we can do it.
Hey, Prasoon, we actually have a question wherein we're being asked if there is any training or demo videos available. Then yes, we can in fact extend a free demo also. You may please write at info@voltersfluidindia.co.in. I'll be pasting that on chat as well. We'll look forward to hearing from you.
Yeah, I would just like to add one more point. We have a proper documentation, wherein in the system itself, when the users use the system, if they press the F5 key button, so they would see where they are standing at that point in time in the solution. For example, if I'm at a materiality page, if I press F5, I'd be straight away taken to the materiality Q&A. So it eases the users to get answers for their questions. That's one. And secondly, we have a policy, very well-defined policy. Now, since it's an on-premise solution or a desktop-based solution, where it is at our client's discretion to host their data either on their server or on cloud. Okay, so the acceptable use policy is in place, and then where we have defined all the master packs, as I have mentioned, and we have a very well processed literature where we have a proper documentation for manager users, proper documentation for the entire product, for the user access rights, for the calculation of materiality. We have all separately documented this literature, so that whenever we onboard someone, we share all these documents for their know-how. And apart from that, we closely work as a partner, as our speakers have already mentioned. We assign dedicated team, dedicated account manager who takes care of the training and the walkthrough, apart from the literature that we provide as a support system.
This is it from my side for today. Thank you so much, everybody, for attending. We've addressed all of the questions that we received. Thank you to our speakers also.
Thank
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much,
Feel free to
everybody.
email us or drop us a message by scanning the QR code or to our email ID.
Thank you.
By... Thank you.
Thank you, Vaidu ji. Thank you, Sunil ji. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Have a
Thank you
great
very
evening
much.
ahead. Thank you.
You too.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Thank you very much.